Hi Nicola, and welcome to the Stories Behind Empowered Women series. And I've had the great fortune of knowing you for several years. We met by pure coincidence in a hotel in Africa, Northern Africa, and our story together unfolded from there. So just explain to the viewers what you do, and then we can dive into your story.
So I am a makeup artist and have been ever since I left university, and which would have been now just over 15 years. And I work as a freelance artist, but as I suppose we'll end up talking about, is that I also have set up voluntary workshops for women dealing with cancer to help them what am I trying to say, to show them really how to feel themselves again, and that's what I do over here, really.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, this is the the real essence of the work that you do, because we all know what it feels like when we put makeup on, and well, obviously us women, when we put makeup on. Yesterday I didn't bother, I didn't even wash my hair. I felt incredibly different, but I was very much in work mode. When we do put makeup on, it gives us a different feel. It's not the outer, but it's what it's doing to the inner self, isn't it? And I guess that's what's inspired you to look deeper, because you've written for a lot of my newsletters in the past, and you've always, and I still follow a lot of the regimes that you've been recommending to people. So you really do look at the inner woman apart from doing the outer. So what is it that inspires you about that?
Well, I think actually after we met and we spoke, and I have loved doing makeup loved every part of it, and I think what you made me realize is one of the main parts that I love is how it makes the person feel when I've finished, or just to even show them really, really small things that make huge differences to women. So I worked on a MAC cosmetic counter for over 10 years and never got bored of it. There was always someone new to come in. I made friends from that counter, clients that would come in and solely see me. And it is about sitting down, listening to somebody, and then just drawing out what it is they want to focus on and making them feel really, really good about themselves. Because as superficial as makeup is, like you said, it is a very powerful thing. If I don't put makeup on throughout the day and I do catch myself in the mirror, I suppose I can feel a bit flat. And the difference is when you do a few small things in your routine that can make a massive difference to your confidence throughout the day. It can change situations, how you deal with life, everything about it. And I suppose that is one thing, or one element to the workshop that is really beautiful, is that when we sit down with these women and they do walk in and they're a bit unsure as to what they're going to come out looking like, but you sit down and you really listen to their story. They might not want to talk about their story, but they do want to be spoken to as a woman, and not as a patient. And so that was one thing that really I feel like we deliver in these workshops, is we sit down and we talk to them about their skincare, because their skin would have changed, and we talk to them about small ways of putting on their eyebrows when they might have lost their hair through chemotherapy, and choosing the perfect lipstick that they, because their colouring might have changed, their skin might be a little bit redder, and they do lose their feeling of feeling feminine a lot of the time, because they're just focused on this, and they forget that side. And every time we've done it, the positivity that comes out of the workshop, because it is all about them and just making them feel nice and just normal. And we sit there and we have cups of tea, and people might bring in little things to eat, and we do little goodie bags, so they take home things so that they can replicate it, and they've gone away with the tools really to help them on a daily basis feel a little bit more normal, in a time difficult.
So what actually inspired you to create these workshops? And it's a group of you, isn't there?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm fortunate enough to know an awful lot of makeup artists out here
Hmm.
because I've been in the industry a long time,
And you're in
and really
Australia, just so the
in
viewers know.
Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so everyone really wants to give their time. You know, it's just
Mhm.
nobody had, you know, not that they hadn't thought about it, but, you know, I suppose unless you come up with the idea and then try and facilitate it, you know, people do want to join into these things. And it
Mhm.
was obviously from sitting and having our sessions and talking to you about myself and being a makeup artist and it just led to that. Really, I think you really sparked an idea and said, you know, Nicola, I think you really, what you get out of doing people's makeup is a different level. It's not a superficial one. It's not just somebody comes and sits in your chair and you put some makeup on them. You kind of feel that person, and you and I did want to, I suppose, make a difference. And I said to you that I had attended a workshop for a great um uh what's the word, um it's called Look Good Feel Better. So
Right. So
they
cool.
work with the hospitals, which is a
Yeah.
beautiful group of women that do volunteer their time.
Mhm.
But I did feel like when I did volunteer my time for those workshops, it was quite clinical,
Right.
and it was done in a hospital. We weren't allowed to touch the women really or put the makeup on them. We just had to
Mm.
sit there and direct it. And I just felt like no one really connected. We talked, it
Mm.
felt very much about cancer and not about makeup. They walked away with a lot of free goods, but they didn't necessarily have the tools that, to do that on a regular basis. And I suppose that's really where I wanted to change that and show them how they can use those products on a daily basis.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because that's what this is all about. It's about human engagement and reaching to somebody um, to help them bring the best out in themselves. And you're quite right. You know, in those clinical situations, we really are very limited. So this
Mm.
is more about not what you're showing them and helping them on the outside. It's what you're showing them and helping them to achieve from the inside, whilst focusing on the outer appearance.
Yes.
And you don't have
Yeah.
any fear in doing that. And I think that's quite enchanting about all of this. It's you kind of go in there and you bring the magic out in all these women, and that's what's so beautiful about this, and that's exactly what's needed, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, you know, women just need because a lot of women don't actually know how to put their makeup on in you know, that it's forever changing. You know, a lot of women actually do the same makeup from when they were in their early 20s
Mm.
to when they are later on in life, you know, in maybe their 50s. And unless they're shown or they've got any interest in knowing how to change and get their best out their skincare, and you know, because your skin changes very much. From 25 to 35, my skin is totally different, you know, and so
Mm.
you kind of have to evolve and adapt, but unless you've got somebody to sort of talk you through it, and actually someone that's not trying to sell you something.
What I was going to ask you actually is what I've recognised over the years is whenever I've been frustrated and want to buy makeup, I've gone to into a store, approached somebody at a makeup counter, and all they've done is done my makeup in a way that I'm not really comfortable with, and then tried to sell me a load of products that I don't really need. And I've walked away
Yeah.
feeling very disappointed and disheartened. And what you're talking about is helping women to understand about who they are individually, uniquely them. And I think that
Yeah.
that's the mistake. I think that that's what's put me off over the years, and I think that puts a lot of women off as well, going into a
Yeah.
store. What do you recommend then? Do you feel that people should perhaps go to somebody who's qualified in this and will actually come and spend some time, perhaps, looking at who they are and what they need, and then allowing them to go out and get those products? Would that be a better option for people?
Yeah, that's totally it. Because I feel like as well, you know, when I first started out, in the industry, you don't know everything about it, and you do maybe replicate the makeup that you do on yourself, on other people. And what you need is somebody that is actually experienced, that goes, well, that foundation's not going to sit well on your skin because, you know, it's dry, and you know, matte, it's a matte coverage, and if you haven't prepped the skin like this, you're not going to get that sort of finish. You need someone that really does identify with the problems that you're having, and your different eye shapes, and just, you know, different, what color lipstick is really gonna really be, you know, there's not one shade for any person, but there are ways to tailor your makeup to that lipstick that is gonna, you know, make you feel really great. So yeah, I think, you know, at these workshops that we do sit down and we write all the products, so that the women, if they do choose to, they can go and, you know, they can purchase them, as well as we give them a card, because I named the event Make Me Me, and that came about through my friend who we sat down and brainstormed, and she said, well, it's kind of more about making them feel like themselves. We didn't want like the thought of having like you know, a massive makeover whilst you know, going through all this. I really wanted it to be more of a personal makeup lesson for them to be able to use those tools and go away and be able to do that on a daily basis.
So this is something that you do in and around the Sydney area, isn't it, in Australia? Yeah. And I guess this would be, sorry, Danny, I was just going to say, because I guess that this would inspire other makeup artists to perhaps consider doing this, because there are so many people in all sorts of situations, you know, people who are going through bereavement, perhaps, not just cancer patients, but perhaps other people who are going through some kind of unfortunate time in their life. So what would you say to other makeup artists, people who work with, you know, improving the whole self? What would you suggest for people who perhaps are watching this and thinking, well, actually, I've had an idea, you know, how would you start something like this?
I would say do it, because I would say all it takes is your time, really. And whenever I go into this support groups, we work with a few now at a few different centres, and they're, you know, really, really thankful, and all the artists that go in get an awful lot out of it, and go away thinking, oh, that was, you know, it was so nice, it felt so nice. It's not only rewarding, you know, it's really rewarding for us, but you know, what am I trying to say? You know, if you can see it as, I'd say to any makeup artist, that, you know, giving your time, and that's really all it is, for free, to somebody that really truly needs it, you know, you get an awful lot from it, because from you, and that person, you could totally change that person's day, week, month, you know. And I've got clients that I keep in touch with from those workshops that I, you know, offer free makeups to, so I go back into their houses and you know, see them, and it's nice. I meet their families, you know, and
so it's the whole experience. You get really involved with these people, and you always light up whenever you talk about them, which is actually magical. That's what I'm saying. It's what you're doing, and it's not just that you know, changing them. It's also making a difference to their loved ones as well, because they see the change in these women. So I think
definitely.
It's a very inspiring role to be involved in, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, they're, like you said, you know, these women that are married, that have gone through all of this, that may have really struggled, you know, with themselves and their identity and feeling feminine, and to have someone spend that little bit of time, and then you see, you know, their husband say to them, oh, you look so lovely, and just, you can feel it in their in their soul that for a little while they just feel really, really nice, and that
Yeah.
is priceless for me. It's a lovely feeling to be able to give that to someone just to make them feel special,
Yeah, absolutely. So you always come across as a very engaged, very bubbly, very, very, outgoing person. You've got a lot to put into life. You always want to make the most of life. What is it, I want to know a little bit more about Nicola. What inspired you, and why is it that you have this spiritual element to you? I mean, was it something you were aware of when you were younger? Did you want to sort of learn more about and become more aware, or did you fall into it because you overcame some adversity? What was it that brought this back out in you?
I never thought I was, probably in tune with any of that. As we all have come to kind of meet and be in contact with you, I suppose we've all gone through adversity, and maybe not the best time. Everyone has a story, and mine, it is definitely not the worst story out there, but I did feel like my patterns of behaviour were being detrimental to me. I wasn't in a particularly happy place with regards to love. I just would attract very, very I shouldn't say bad men, because none of them are bad. They've all got good elements, but maybe people that needed me, and I think that I gave too much and then was exhausted, and then everything would be very dramatic, and it would all end in tears, and I just felt ready to change that pattern. And then you came along, and I felt as soon as I met you, I just knew I needed to speak to you about this particular problem. And I think it's good for people to see if things aren't working, and in the nicest way, this is the best way I can describe it. Life felt like pushing shit up a steep hill. I think it's probably bad to say that, but
Great analogy.
I fought very hard to be in Australia. I had several different heartbreaking breakups that took everything out of me. I was away from my family. I was poor. I didn't have any form of funds. Work, studying was hard. Everything was hard. And Mum took me away on holiday, and I met you, and I was like, life was getting easier, but I wasn't happy 100%, and I just thought I need to stop some of these behavior patterns, and I'm not sure why I'm doing them, because it wasn't my core person, if you see what I mean. And whether it was drinking, partying, all the rest of it wasn't me really. I was just doing some things that I wouldn't normally do and would never do really now, and so you
have overcome quite a lot, because I mean, the one thing that I recognize is when we connected was that you were ready to change, and as soon as you got back to Australia and I got back to the UK, you got in touch with me and said, I've recognized there's some reason why we've connected. And I've seen this over the years. We can connect in the most bizarre places, but when we're ready, we will attract that which helps us to overcome adversity. So your life now is very, very different. You've got you're in a wonderful relationship, and you have such rewarding work, because you found that balance. And I think a lot of this is because you've brought this, you give and you tithe your time, you give so much out, and because of that, the riches and the abundance comes back to you personified. And I think that that's the lovely thing about it. But you don't do this, you're not being charitable to gain. You're doing it because the more life is becoming expansive for you, the more you want to give, and then it's just a cycle, isn't it then?
And opportunities arise all the time that you know, one lady, for example, in the last support group that we did for an ovarian cancer support group, one of the ladies there came up to me and was like, I'm with Westmead Hospital, which is a big hospital, and we have a couple of support groups there. We would love to have you guys come. Would you do it? And I was like, of course. And so, you know, last year we only helped 2 support groups, and now this year it's looking like it will be 5. And that, you know, it's that's great if we can go in, you know, and make that sort of difference to people, you know. And it is what you put in, what you get out. But those sort of opportunities come because you do put, you know, it in, and you know, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's just like it just keeps going and keeps getting bigger. It's like a spiral.
It's interesting because I've recently interviewed another woman who's over in Australia, and she is a nurse, and she inspires that you know, and helps nurses to put the heart back into nursing. And she's in that same situation as you. She's grown, she's putting out there, she's giving. And I think now she's at that stage where she's going to teach other nurses to be able to teach and transform. And I guess I see this is with you as well. You know, you have a concept here. You have something that can go into many, many walks of life, because, as you say, that the medical system, or you know, when we go into we reach out in times of need, it can be a very clinical process when we're going through that medical route. What you're doing is, you know, bringing some, you know, a lot of light, a lot of love, a lot of magic into these situations. And I think, you know, really this is a huge example to a lot of people out there who are thinking, what can I do to transform somebody's life? So just so people can find out a bit more about you, do you have a website? Do you have, you know, how do people contact you?
Yep, so I have my website, nicolabeverley.com, www.nicolabeverley.com. And then we have got an Instagram page, make.me.me, if you want to contact, or you can go on there and have a look at some of the pictures. And there's also a Facebook page. Of stuff that we've done, and you know, people that we've worked with, but yes, and I've also got a makeup agency now called the Makeover Dolls, which we supply makeup artists to events as well, which is something separate as well. So all of these things I just work on, and that's what we do. That's what I do.
What I'll do is I'll add all the links into this, because we have been cutting out a little bit, but you know, that's technology. You're in Australia, I'm in the UK, and it's just, you know, one of those things. But I'll add all the links. So I mean, it's been absolutely fascinating speaking to you, Nicola. It always is. I just love your energy, and as I say, you know, the things that I've learned from you, you know, over our time knowing you, and the videos that you've shared with my subscribers as well have been amazing and inspirational. So, you know, I hope to see a lot more in the future. But thank you so much for sharing your story today, and I will see you very soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you.